So that was a brand-led campaign, no price offer in it, and it had record sales in the first week. So, which is fantastic. That's what you want. You want that double whammy of brand leading to sales straight away. But sometimes, that brand effect will take a while to accumulate and really, really happen. It doesn't necessarily always happen that fast. That's a super added bonus. A lot of people, when they innovate, they spend not enough time right at the beginning on figuring out what they should do. They jump into the execution of it because we all like to get into that action mode. They come up with an idea, they come up with a plan, and then they make assumptions to rationalize why they're doing that, rather than get kind of that starting dumb and really understanding what's going on before you kind of commit to a path. So I think that step, strategically to really have a look at the situation is key to come up with something fresh rather than something that's just expected in the category. Because that's often what we do. We come up with expected ideas, or we copy other people's ideas rather than come up with something that's truly different.
All right. Well, I never know how I'm going to start or where I'm going to start, but I think people sort of need to know who is in front of them,
Yeah.
How would you encapsulate what you do?
Yeah, I guess I'm an agency owner, so I've kind of grown Young Shand into the business that it is for 13 years. I guess I'm a father of 3. I'm a runner.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a part-time hacky cook. That's kind of me.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yep.
on the running front, what are you running? Are you half marathons, 10K?
Well, actually, 4 years ago, my brother signed up to the Auckland Marathon, and I was turning 50 that year. And so he's my younger brother, younger by 4 years, and he sort of baited me in to running it with him. Because, how many opportunities do you kind of get to kind of train with your brother and do a marathon? So I sort of took him up on the challenge and did the Auckland Marathon. My sole objective was to beat my younger brother. So I trained pretty hard, and actually he didn't train that hard. So at the end of the day, I bet him comfortably. And in the process, I went from someone who kind of just hates running like the rest of us to someone that is kind of a bit of a mad runner, really. And then I've done 3 more marathons since then.
Wow.
So every year for the last 4 years.
Have you, I think it's similar to boxing in the sense like it's an art form. And the more you unpack, the more you realize the subtle intricacies of what leads to it being successful. So I didn't think I was going to talk about running, but
No.
what makes running good? Like, how is it the mental aspect? Is it the running on your toes instead of your heels? Have you ever thought about it?
I think it's a whole lot of things, right? I think firstly, obviously, there's a physical benefit to running, right? It's a healthy activity, but then I think it's also especially for a busy sort of business owner, or anyone that's got a lot of things that they're juggling in their lives, so they don't have to be a business owner, but there's plenty of other sorts of stress. But it helps you cope with that stress because, before I ran, I went through a period of meditating, and so I meditated in the morning. But then when I found running replaced the meditation, right? Because you're out, you're on your own, you're running for 30 minutes or an hour, sometimes 3 or 4 hours, right? That's a lot of time that you just almost get into the rhythm of it and think about nothing, or you think about whatever you need to think about and process it. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's that meditative side of it, and then it's just, if you're a little bit competitive, it's a great sport for, kind of just trying to hit personal bests and PBs and do a bit better and go a bit faster. So, there's a kind of competitive edge to it as well. So,
was there like a belief system you had to shatter on what you were capable of?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah?
So 100%. So in that first marathon, I remember I hadn't committed to doing the marathon. I went out and was having a few runs, and I was running around Western Springs Lake, down at the park. And I think I decided that day I had to run 10Ks, that I'd only be doing I think I decided I had to run 8Ks, and I'd only been doing sort of little 5K runs. And I was down running around the lake, and I was probably at kilometre 6, and it was hurting. And that little voice in my head is going, "This is fucking terrible. Why are you doing this? You're not a runner." And I recognize that self-limiting belief, right? Sitting there, nipping away on my shoulder. So I just basically said, "Oh, piss off. Stuff this. I can do this. I can run." And I just started talking back and said, "I can do this. I'm going to run." And that day I ran 12 kilometers and kind of ran home and thought, okay, yep, signed up that night. So Yeah, I think running, there's lots of little barriers like that, because let's face it, you don't go running because it's fun. You do it for lots of other reasons. It hurts, and you've got to break through that hurt a lot of the time to get the benefit out of it.
You remind me of, I don't know if you've heard the story of David Goggins.
No.
David Goggins, like this ultra marathon runner, like massive, like, they run for days.
Yeah, absolutely. They're amazing.
And he was, his feet were all stuffed, and he took his shoes off, and then he was running. And then one of the other runners asked about him. They're like, well, what's going on with Goggins? What's he up to? And he was just like, there was no one there. And he was just saying, who's going to carry the boats? And just like screaming to himself. Like he was fighting demons that weren't even there. You know what I mean? Like he was trying to like channel something.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious, like, how does that transfer into your life, like into business? So you've got this running mindset. You've extended what you're capable of.
Yeah.
Does that transferable? Does your limit expand beyond physical?
I think so. I think there's lots of things that kind of carry over. I think, persistence in business is a key thing, right? I think a lot of people try something, it's hard, they give up, right? And so I think a lot of business failures aren't really failures for any other reason other than people just haven't given it enough effort to break through and make something successful. I think, so that persistence is important. I think, proper preparation is important, right? You can't just, throw on your shoes and go running. You've got to build up, mile by mile or, distance by distance, and look after yourself and think about what you're eating and sleep and everything else. I think that applies in business as well. You've got to think about the whole business and not just jump in there and be the sales guy or the operations guy. You've got to look at how the whole system works. I think you learn from your we all learn from our failures, right? You go out there and you try and do something and it doesn't work, and you've got to go back and go, okay, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? Where did I fall down on that one? What can I do better next time, right? So exactly the same processes, you kind of go through if you want to become a better runner or you want to become better at business and grow.
So you said something interesting about that, staying persistent in the face of adversity. You used different words. Was there a moment where, you're looking at a big ass wall that you might not be able to climb when you're starting your business, or you thought something was going to be like this and it was like that, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, I think a number of different times, right? We've had a pretty challenging last few years. We went through a big shift, as a business, probably halfway through. We started out as we've always been a creative agency, but in the beginning, Young Shand was a very digitally focused creative agency. But after 5 or 6 years, all the other agencies caught up. They figured this internet thing out. They started building websites and banner ads and doing social media just as well as we could. So we couldn't stay just being a digital agency. Otherwise, we'd be outflanked. So, we had to pivot and become a creative agency. And we did a whole lot of things wrong. We didn't have the right team or the right people. We didn't have the right experience. We jumped in there. We got some business. They were horrible clients. They weren't partners. They were just treating us as suppliers. And it was tough. It was, there were some pretty challenging days in there. But, we just refocused, realized what we needed to do, retrenched a little bit before we went back and had another go at it and did it better the next time round. So, there's lots of challenges, and that was kind of just one of them. COVID was another one of them. Right? Yeah. We've all been through that. Yeah,
it's interesting you pivoted to more the creative side. Like, so I like to always watch who's doing what, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. And the Attention Seekers is Stan Henry on a few years ago. And I always struggle with his model where he's successful if he can reach the upper echelon of businesses that don't worry about the bottom line.
Yeah.
But if that lower mark, the retention is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So because you in essence were kind of like a performance component to what you're doing before, and now it's more of a creative. Yeah. What's the change like? Do they more well receive it, or?
Well, I think so. a big part was we couldn't just stay being a digital only agency. So we thought if we're going to be a strategic partner for our clients, we need to do more than just digital. So we decided we had to be strong in strategy, we had to be strong and creative, as well as digital, and doing all three of those components, all four, because we do media as well. So we decided we needed to kind of be able to look after all aspects for our clients. Now, we also very much focus on what we call challenger brands. We don't work with market leaders. We don't focus on the biggest in the category. We focus on the number 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 in the category, and we try and those brands that are really ambitious and want to grow. That's who we help. So we decided that we wanted to look after both the performance as well as the creative side of things for those brands. And I think as a business too, we recognize the more we delved into it, I think it's hard to be successful just focusing on performance, media, performance marketing. You need to have some creative and brand and emotional side of it there as well. I don't know if you saw, but there was an article in something Marketing Week about Airbnb. I think it was Marketing Week. Airbnb, right? And they used to solely focus. They were obviously an online platform, and they always had focused on performance marketing. And about 12 months ago, they decided to move into more of a brand creative led sort of marketing. Both, I don't know what the exact mix was. They didn't ignore performance marketing, but they added brand building to what they were doing, and they had like a 20% increase in revenue and a 14% increase in profit. Well, there you go, right? That's pretty successful, and I think that's our philosophy as well. You need to be clear about the strategy and how you're going to win, and then you need to build interesting, engaging, emotional, creative content. But you also need smart, effective, performance-driven media as well. You need to do both. It's not a either or.
It's an interesting balance. Like I heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about the TikTokification of social media.
Yep.
And it seems to be more of an art-led advertising spend as opposed to a math. By that I mean, for the listeners, is like the algorithm has been gotten so good at putting the right creative in front of someone that's interested in that.
Yeah.
And then the targeting used to be the name of the game. If you can target this person, put it like that. But now if you have incredible creative, that will naturally be put in it, and you let the AI do its thing.
Yeah.
I don't know the conversion piece, but are you finding that's like a big shift?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where the real sweet spot is. If you can create that interesting. I don't think it's about putting ads out there just to shout at people. Back to your point, target people, put ads that get in front of the right people and interrupt their day. I think we're moving to that evolution of the content and the creative is king now. If you can create interesting, creative content that your audience is going to engage with, they're going to find interesting, educational, or entertaining. That's the trick. You need to do something that is of value for the consumer, not something that's just interrupting or shouting at the consumer.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Like, I never got how, like, you're consuming a newsfeed, whatever one.
Yeah.
And now suddenly there's this thing out of place.
Yeah.
And then you've also got pattern recognition. So all your prior experiences with this thing out of place is that they'd want something from me.
Yeah.
And I never got why people aren't more focused on being the TV show.
Yeah.
And being part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know how that converts, though. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's long term and there's short term, right?
Yeah.
So if you believe the Benets and the Fields and the Mark Ritsons and the Byron Sharps, they're always talking about the long and the short, the brand building value. So I think going out there and doing the TV show or the emotional commercial or creating something that is entertaining isn't necessarily going to deliver sales straight away. And that's where I think you were talking before about, you've got to get to that top end that can afford to spend the money, because if you're in the that kind of a bracket of client that can't afford it and they're not getting results quickly, they'll stop, right? Even though they shouldn't. Things take time. People end up stopping doing the advertising probably just before it starts to work, and then they write it off and don't do it again. That's the trap. So I think good, creative, engaging content, that's having some value for the consumer will deliver results. It just might take a little while before it starts to come back, because not everyone is in the market for a new car or an insurance policy or a holiday right now. There's only 5 to 10% or 5 to 20% at the most that are in the market for something at the right time. So the advertising is an investment in driving future consumers, not necessarily consumers right now.
That's the crazy thing. Like I'm a big believer that brand is all that matters, outside of obviously execution, looking after staff.
Yeah.
It's just whether you can keep the lights on long enough for brand to matter.
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I think we've done campaigns. We did a campaign for Flick Electric, the electricity company, earlier in the year, and that got record sales from almost the first week. So that was a brand-led campaign, no price offer in it, and it had record sales in the first week. So, which is fantastic. That's what you want. You want that double whammy of brand leading to sales straight away. But sometimes, that brand effect will take a while to accumulate and really, really happen. It doesn't necessarily always happen that fast. That's a super added bonus.
Well, it took me 2 years of nothing happening. And then people started calling. I didn't have a funnel, paid ads, just made content. Yeah. But now, the return on that, whether getting staff easily, whether being able to connect with people I never thought possible, or calling for help from successful people, it's been insane. Yeah. Here's a little pushback on. So I feel like a lot of content is board led. So a whole lot of people sitting inside an office speculating what's going to work well instead of consumer-led. Yeah. And I don't know too much of the quantity of creative that you might put out. Yeah. How do you either recognize what will work well, or is it better to go the greater volume till something clicks,
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, I think everything will start board-led, or from the marketing director or the CMO having an idea or the brief of what they want to do. That's kind of really natural. But our job, we have a series of kind of principles that we work with, and the first one is kind of called start dumb, right? So we will take that brief and then we will just ask lots of questions and talk to a number of people in that company, but then also want to talk to a number of consumers about the product and the company, and then look at the market and the competitors and really decide what the problem is and what we need to do. So, we want to sort of peel back the onion until we get to the heart of what the real challenge is, before we start making assumptions or coming up with ideas that we think are interesting. And I was listening to this guy, I can't remember his name, Nathan, his name will come back to me later, but he was talking about a lot of people, when they innovate, they spend not enough time right at the beginning on figuring out what they should do. They jump into the execution of it, because we all like to get into that action mode. They come up with an idea, they come up with a plan, and then they make assumptions to rationalize why they're doing that, rather than get kind of that starting dumb and really understanding what's going on before you kind of commit to a path. So I think that step, strategically to really have a look at the situation is key to come up with something fresh, rather than something that's just expected in the category. Because that's often what we do. We come up with expected ideas, or we copy other people's ideas, rather than come up with something that's truly, truly different.
Yeah, I fall privy to it all the time. It's like you're copying someone that might have copied someone that wasn't actually working, but because you copied them, you thought it was working, so now you're doing it.
Absolutely.
And then they're just already doing exceptionally well, and now you're not even standing out. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the two school of thoughts I sort of see as the GaryVee document instead of create? Yeah. The Mr. Beast create. It's a lot easier to get one video do exceptionally well than it is to get 100. Yeah. So how do you, which camp are you in? Are you in both? Are you in somewhere in the middle?
Well, I think what we like to do is to kind of spend the time on the strategy, and then we will in our ideation process, we will come up with 100 ideas, but we'll throw 95 of them away. We'll polish 3 of them up that we think are the ones that are truly interesting and different and have a real difference, and then we'll go to market on the one we think is the winner. But we'll also then, you want to then follow up and not just rely on that single execution. You need to do good work and fresh work over and over and over and over again. But I wouldn't throw 100 things at the wall and hope something's going to work. I would find that one thing that you're really confident is going to work, invest in it, do it, then do something else, then do something else, then do something else, and kind of keep being fresh in the market. You also can let things take their time as well. I think as marketers, we get sick of what we're doing faster than any consumer does, right? Because when we're promoting something out there in the market, we've been working on this for 2 months or 3 months. We make it for a month, we put it out there for a month or two. We're so bored with it, after it's been going for 6 months, but 3/4 of your consumers haven't even seen it. So I think we have a habit of pulling things too fast and moving on to the next thing, which doesn't allow the equity to build, your assets to build, that familiarity to kind of build as well. So I think you can let things, you can invest in them longer than we usually let them in the marketplace.
I think it reminds me sort of an analogy in financial advisory of trying to talk someone off the cliff. Like it's a bit of an abstract link, but I mean, you're thinking on one hand, you might be a believer that you've earned the right to feel this way, and your client's sitting there being like, we've invested 2 months. There's been a 1 month in. So how do you have that conversation, or do you, in financial advisory, we set the expectation?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit about that, setting the expectation, going, this is going to take some time. You need to invest in this for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. You need to be prepared to lay down that investment. That only goes so far though, right? Because you want to see things. You want proof that whether this is working or not. So, I think, tracking some things that are going to be giving you indications that this is working is really important. So there's 2 things you can do. One is, I like to track share of search. So if people are searching for your brand name, just through Google, and and people are trying to find your brand in the marketplace, that's a really good indication about how well your comms are doing in the marketplace, because people are only searching for you if they're hearing about you, or it could be through your customers or referrals, but if it's through the marketing activity you're doing and that's driving an increase in those amount of searches, that's what you want to see. So tracking your share of searches is a good thing to do. The other thing to do is to do some brand tracking. Now, brand tracking has historically been quite expensive. If you go to one of the big research companies like a TRA or a Perceptive or someone like that, you could be spending 25 to 30 grand a year doing some really rudimentary brand tracking just to kind of get a handle on your brand recall and what's going on. But there's new things out there. There's a new company called Tracksuit, which is an online brand tracking tool where for $1,500 a month, something like that, you can start to track your brand and get a real quantitative measurement for how it's growing in the marketplace. So having some sort of measurement to something that's quite intangible to give you confidence that you're building that brand is really important. At the end of the day, you want to start to see some sales, right? And you want to start to see dollars. But I think in the early days, having some of those tracking things in place will at least give you confidence that the comms you're doing is working.
Yeah, there's a guy I'm following a lot of. This just cuts off at 30, so it's the camera's on me. You didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
Alex Hormozi, I don't know if you've seen much of him. He's taken off, and he sees value as the likelihood of achieving your goal and the speed of which you achieve it.
Yeah.
And if you're tracking it, you're essentially, giving them the reassurance that it's progressing towards what they're achieving.
Yeah.
What are the conversations like with a client? What do you find is the reason they're buying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I would sell to an individual, I could work that out, but you got all these other people, and I'd have to pull my hair out. I have more grey hair. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think the reason they're buying is, they're ambitious. They want to grow their business. There's usually a number of competitors ahead of them in the marketplace, and they want to figure out how to win against those competitors and grow their market share. So they're wanting to grow, because I think once you get to and we're dealing with mid to large size companies. We're kind of dealing with businesses that are $20 million turnover up to $200 million turnover. So they're quite big. They're not your corporate enterprise level companies, and they're not your small retailer owner operator businesses either, although some can be. But these businesses recognize that they need to invest in their marketing if they're going to grow share against their competitors. They're not going to be able to do it just by doing what they've always done. They've got to do something different. Yeah,
because if you don't have brand and you don't have a point of difference, you're competing on price.
Yeah.
Which is pretty rough. But then also you're saying these, hey, more people are Googling a name, and we've got some sales, or maybe you got exceptional sales, and you're not necessarily not going to get sales. What do you think is what keeps clients on? You know what I mean? I can imagine service is quite helpful. They're usually money driven. It all comes down to money in business, I find.
It all comes down to money, right? Yeah. So, for us, we want to help our clients grow. So our ambition is to grow 10 world-class New Zealand brands over the next 10 years. We want to help, develop the next Xero or the next Fonterra, grow a New Zealand business that's kind of in the middle to being a significant New Zealand business that is competing with the best brands in the world. That's what we want to do. So if we can help our clients keep growing significantly year after year after year, they'll be happy. At the end of the day, that's what they want, and that's what we want as well. We want to grow our clients so that they become bigger, more significant New Zealand businesses.
Do you ever think about how to enable them to spend more money? Alex Hormozi talked about with his, I'm just going all in on him every podcast because I've said so one person until I get it.
Yeah.
And he with his gym launch, initially they'll do ad spend.
Yeah.
And he just wants to help them so they can do more ad spend. So he helps train their sales team. He does a sales call every morning. He helps keep retention and systemize that. Because that's the end of the game. If they're making more money, they can spend more money, and then blah, blah, blah. Do you ever think of partnerships or structuring or supporting them in a different way as well, or staying in your lane? Or
Yeah, no, I think so. I think, if you see something for any partner that you think they're going to get a benefit out of, whether it's a different service or a different approach, it could be market research, it could be some sort of product development opportunities, you're going to be working and talking with your clients about those things as well. But it's not just all about the ads. It could be about building a better website or creating a better experience. At the end of the day, as you said, you need to have a product that is interesting, better, and has got a point of difference over your competitors. And then you need to build brand so people know about that. Those are the two key things. And you've got to be able to do that at a profit.
Do you ever do that, adjust the offer they have? You think, okay, they're already exceptional at it, but how do we, lack of a better word, make it sexy? You know what I'm saying? How do you spin it?
Yeah, well, we often are talking about the offer as in the proposition that they're putting in front of people. So that might, we don't necessarily get into pricing conversations with our clients, but we are talking about how we want to communicate their point of difference in the marketplace, how we want to position them, so that their strengths are clearer versus the competition. So that makes it easier for them to win rather than just doing what they've always done.
What would you say is brand? I know it's a bit abstract, but what does a brand mean to you, and what if a brand is run well, what are the implications for that business?
Yeah, well, I think a brand is the sum of almost everything that a business does for the consumer. So it's the product, because a good product impacts the brand. It's not. It's their beliefs and their approach. So what gets them out of bed in the morning? What's their purpose? What's their drive? Who are they going to fight for at the end of the day? So what drives that business? It's their values. How do they think and operate? It's their positioning in the market, their proposition, their personality. So how do they project themselves? And then it's how do they show up? What's their logo? What's their identity look like? What is their what's their tone of voice? So it's all those things, from the product to their to those principles and what drives them, to actually how they present themselves. The sum of all of those things, to me, is the brand. It's all of those interactions that the company has every day with its consumers adds up to that total brand experience.
Yeah, something I struggle with is I call it fruity tooty, but I know it's important, especially to a lot of people. Is the color means this, the font means this speaks this about. I struggle to comprehend that. Do you have a process of interpreting what the color or what the brand or how it feels like? And that's such an intangible.
Absolutely. So we go through a strategy process where we want to understand, the company and what drives the company. So that's things like purpose, values, vision, proposition that we talked about before. We want to understand the market. What are the other brands in the marketplace? What do they look like? Because you don't want to be a blue brand if every other brand in the market is blue, right? So sometimes the way you turn up is dictated by how everyone else is turning up in the marketplace, because you want to be different. You don't want to be the same, but you want to be true to who the brand is, right? So you don't want to turn up in a suit that's completely the antithesis of your personality as a business and a brand. It needs to be congruent. So you want to be different than the competitors. You want to be true to yourself, and you want to be appealing to the customer. So you need to understand what is interesting to the consumer. What are they looking for? What drives their needs, wants, and desires? What kind of insights can you develop about their lives and what they're looking for? So it's a combination of those three things will then drive how you want to develop that whole, kind of that whole brand identity, how the brand looks, feels, and sounds.
It's fascinating, because I sort of I love psychology and people and understanding them. And I feel like doesn't matter what it is, what sort of marketing channel we're using, whether it was radio, whether it was TV, whether it was billboards, is just a movement towards genuine interactions.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It sounds as though you're assigning physical human traits to a brand that are starting from humans.
Yeah.
Differentiating. Let's say in the wilderness, you're standing out from the competitors.
Yeah.
And that facilitates a type of person that you want that will come and be attracted to said thing.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
So, we talk about trying to create, a gravity brand or a lighthouse brand, something that's going to draw the right sort of people that you want into the brand. And you're only going to do that by creating that kind of connection. And that connection is going to be that combination of all those facets of the brand and the personality and the connections with people and what they're desiring and looking for. So it's quite a methodical process you go through, but then there is a magic process to kind of get those ingredients just right and to make something work.
I could see there being a framework. I don't know it. It sounds like you're detailing it.
Yeah.
And you've added an engineering component to a creative process, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's about building the platform. So before we get into making the creative, we start dumb. We define the fight. How's this brand going to win in the marketplace? And then we'll build the platform, and that's that strategic platform that we want to. That we spend time defining before we jump into any of the creative, the design, all of that side of things to help us win more times than we don't.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because I see these people, they make these beautiful commercials, and I'm like, what does this mean? Why is it like this? And that's 200 grand, please. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I still can do it. Like, I'm not going to ask your prices, but like, he was like, oh, yeah, they pay me $200,000 to do one video.
Yep.
That flops, or it might not flop.
Absolutely.
So I can. That's what I mean about the engineering component. You seem to have a structure that it stops people being too creative in their assumptions.
Yeah. So, there is an engineering component to it and kind of getting it right, that strategy. But there also has to, we have to allow room to make the magic happen as well, because it's not a straight process. You can't just tick the boxes and get magic out of the other end. That creative process that takes time. It takes thinking. It takes thinking to kind of come up with those ideas that are magic.
It'll be interesting in how you create the space for those ideas. I was talking to a guy from Imagineers.
Yeah.
And he gets a thing. One, he's like, you need to create space. You need
Yeah.
to go to a place that can be creative. And then he gets people to draw toast.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell them how or why, so it goes broad, and the variation is so massive.
Yeah.
And the exact same process to you is like, go wide, be dumb, bring it in.
Yeah.
So how do you create a process where they're not going too far off the creative route, but you're allowing everyone to go, hey, this idea is fine, let's just all... Like, how do you make it okay to have an idea?
Well, I think it's that refining the strategy to kind of create the brief. So taking the problem that the client wants to solve, going through that strategic problem process, looking at everything, starting dumb, then fine-tuning it to the brief. What problem do we want to solve? Who are we solving this for? What do we want them to think afterwards? What fight are we trying to win? So being really clear on the brief that we're giving the creative team to think about. And then it's allowing them space and time. You don't give them the brief and ask them for the answer in 2 hours, right? That doesn't happen. It might happen once in 100 years or once in a blue moon, but typically you need to give them a week, 2 weeks, a month, and they'll go through a process. They'll go through a process themselves of understanding the brand, the category, thinking about lots of different things, coming up with 100 ideas, and then refining that down to the 3 or 4 that the team think are worthy of further exploration. Takes time.
That's a tricky thing to balance as a business owner, and I also, some of the most creative and exceptional people I've ever met are the ones that can speak to the unsaid, and often it's through their inability to speak that themselves.
Yeah,
because they have this pain that's being expressed through their art. And then you've got the business side. Hey, client wants this, got to execute by this point. Hey, be creative.
Yeah.
Is it? What would you say are the unique challenges in your business model? Like, is it the leading of people that are creative? Is it the acquisition? Is it, what would you?
I think it's, we're a business that's always looking for new projects and bringing new clients in. So we have a big focus on business development and looking after our existing clients and understanding their business and solving problems. So there's one part is that business development process. The other part of it is getting through the work and creating outstanding work, and that's where we are a people business. We're 35 people that are focused on creating interesting, creative, exceptional, brave, entertaining ideas that are going to engage with people, and so it's having a process that allows everyone the time and space and is clear and the clarity about what they want to do, and then gives them enough breathing room to kind of do that. And especially when you have all sorts of jobs come in at different times, and you've got to balance all of that and try and keep the machine working. It's that juggle of current projects, keeping the team happy and engaged, and bringing more projects in, keeping that system working is life.
Yeah, it's an art, and I'm being rude because I have to pick someone up. So we're done 40 minutes.
Great.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I judge that you and I are very different, and that's why I'm fascinated by how you approach it.
Yeah.
Because I judge that you would have exceptional skill in an arena I never even comprehend. And when I meet people
Who
like
knows?
that, yeah. Well, I just just the creative process and how you view things is the opposite. I think. I don't know what you think. I'm very analytical, overthinker.
Yeah.
You're more creative, think about it, conceptualize it.
Yeah. Well, half of our business is very creative. Half of our business is a lot more methodical, right? So, a web development is pretty straightforward. There's still a creative element to it, getting the design right, thinking about customers, that user journey, but it's a more straightforward process. Media is even more straightforward. Who do we want to talk to? Where are they going to be consuming media? Let's book it and then let's place it. So different parts of our business are quite different. It's a spectrum.
Well, 2 last questions. The last one will be how you sell it and promote yourself. So it'll be like that'll be the sales bit. The first one is, how do you manage those 2 types of people? Or is there an aspect of your business you had to replace because they speak better to that component? Or you recognized, hey, I'm very good at this, I need to stay away from that?
Yeah, I think, we just have different teams in our business run different ways. So, we have Corey Chalmers, who's our ECD. He was 10 years at Saatchi & Saatchi. He's an exceptional creative leader. He runs and leads the creatives, and, we let him do that. He manages that team, and he'll push back when there's too much work on, and he'll get on with it, and get the job done. So we just have different people managing different parts of the business. Emma's our general manager. She runs the client service team, and she's fantastic with clients, and she's absolutely all over the detail of all the work going on, and really is leading the business day to day. And then we have producers in the middle that are kind of managing all the projects and keeping an eye on all the details of what we need to deliver by when, and kind of cajoling people through the process of getting things done.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And sorry to cut it was quite an efficient podcast, really. 45 to an hour is how long it goes anyways.
Yeah.
So who should find you, and why should they find you? I know you said it already, but...
Yeah, so we're we're an independent agency, and we like to work with New Zealand challenger brands, and what we do is we help them find their fight and win, and we're really focused on helping New Zealand brands actually grow and improve their market share, and kind of win some back against the big multinationals that are typically the market leaders out there in many categories that we have here in New Zealand. So that's what we like to do: work with New Zealand challenger brands and just help them grow market share.
Cool. All right. Well, New Zealand challenger brands, there'll be a link in the description.
Cool.
And thanks for coming on, brother.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Ryan. It's been a pleasure.
It has.